Hi there, I'm Nolan Dalla with Pointspreads.ca, another edition of Slapshot. Here from Las Vegas, we have one of the best in the business here with us today, Teddy Servansky. Teddy covers, known as a professional handicapper, has lived in Las Vegas since 1998, has been a professional gambler. You've seen him just about everywhere, heard him on the radio, seen him on television. He's been featured in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Boston Globe, the Wall Street Journal, been on Showtime, 30 for 30, ESPN, and CBS This Morning, PBS, Bloomberg TV. I mean, when it comes to sports, handicapping, and gambling, Teddy covers. It doesn't no name gets bigger than that one, really. Teddy, nice to have you with us.
Well, you flatter me, Nolan. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
You know, you put in the work, and when I asked you to be on the show, by the way, we're going to talk about the NBA today. It's going to be the tip-off of the NBA tomorrow night, and first slate of games. We're going to talk about that and the NFL and some baseball. But before we get to that, I talked to you yesterday. I said, hey, Teddy, would you come on the show? And you said, you know, you caught me right in the middle of doing my NBA handicapping. I mean, that's work. I mean, tell me, what were you actually doing? When you say you were working on the NBA, what were you looking at?
So over the course of the I didn't do much at all during the long downtime that we had. You know, there wasn't anything that I felt that I didn't feel very productive personally, and I didn't think there was much I was going to be able to accomplish in terms of studying the NBA, studying MLB. You know, I spent a lot of time working on football, you know, thinking, all right, there's a decent chance we have a football season, but I kind of held off on a lot of the other stuff. So once we had start dates and restarts and all of that, all of a sudden it's all right, get back to work, and your mind's not clouded with stuff you read a month ago that doesn't mean anything. I watched the hell out of the scrimmages, you know. I read everything I could read over the course of the last week. And again, you talk about, you know, where do you get your info? Obviously, I have a lot of I follow every beat writer I can on Twitter. But even if you don't do that, Google News is such a powerful tool. It doesn't have to be Google. You know, you just if you're looking for local beat writer type info, you Google News the team and the coach name, and stuff pops up. So what was I doing? I was reading. I was reading yesterday when I was saying I was going through the NBA. But that came on the heels of watching all these scrimmages. I mean, I spent a lot of time in front of the TV this last week watching scrimmages, because that's probably the best info that's out there. Even though so much of the scrimmages were like a summer league here in Vegas, you know, or like D-League, there were extended stretches of multiple scrimmages that were like that. There was still, in my mind, a lot to be learned and gained from watching those, and hopefully it'll pay off this next week.
You know, it's so funny. A lot of people walk into the sports book and or go online and then plop down, you know, whatever their money is on a game. And I mean, to do it right and to gain, let's say, just the 5 or 6% edge that you need to make a living in this town, like you've done for 22 years. I mean, people don't realize, I don't think, the massive amount of reading, studying, watching, and then taking out the garbage, because so much of it's the noise to, you know, whatever ratio is high in sports gambling. Rumors, you don't know what to throw out. How do you weed through all the noise?
Yeah, I mean, the noise to signal ratio is enormous, or minimal, I should say. It's minimal. There's a ton of static and not that much meaningful information. How do I do it? The truth of it is, I've been doing it a long time, and experience, at least for finding useful tidbits of information. I might read 10 articles and find one line in one article. It's like, this is a bet. Oh, this is a bet, you know, or this has the potential to be a bet if I see this situation. You know, it's the old poker ad. It's the hard way to make an easy living. It's not that different when it comes to sports betting. And look, there are guys that do it a very different way. There are people that crunch numbers, and that's what they do. They're going to crunch their numbers, and they're going to come up with plays, and that's not necessarily as labor intensive at this. There are recreational bettors and casual bettors who are like, hey, you know, Lakers are great. The Suns suck, or whoever it is. And that's, you know, the basis for their wagers. And there are people that do that do okay with that. My strategy has always been little edges over time. That's something that was kind of drilled into my head by my mentor getting into the industry, of course, the late, great Dave Malinsky, rest his soul. But it's like, it's not about, you're not going to find these incredible bets, these 90% bets. There's not, you know, they're not out there. What you're going to find is you take information and you take your thought process, you take what you're seeing on the screen when you're watching these teams, and you find little edges. And little edges over time are how we make our money.
Yeah,
it's just
and it's funny that you can be wrong, and all of us were all wrong. You could have put in a ton of work, and then sometimes it just doesn't, go the way we expected. Somebody will throw, a star quarterback will throw 4 interceptions, and there'll be a fumble at the worst time. I mean, things that are just we can't predict. And speaking of things we can't predict, excuse me, let's get right into the NBA. And breaking news here on Wednesday morning, meaning the day before the 2020 season, I guess, continues in the NBA with an abbreviated slate of games. The news is that, good news out of the NBA is that no one has tested positive in the past 9 days, according to most reports. Now, that's astonishing considering what's happening in baseball. First of all, do you trust those? We're in a trust. We have a trust void here, gap. I think when it comes to all news, but what do you make of that?
I make it as a positive sign initially. All that said, as we know, it's not about what the first test says or what the test says the second day, what's it look like a week in, a month in, etc. There are still vulnerabilities in that bubble. Make no mistake about it. There is still the possibility for trouble in that bubble. But we certainly haven't seen yet in the NBA or the NHL that are playing bubble anything like we've seen in MLB, where now the Miami Marlins are essentially shut down. And it's funny, you talk about the concepts of things, that happen that you don't predict, or the random things that, all right, I found this great info, but it doesn't win me a bet today. What game was it? The Tigers and somebody. Who did the Tigers play that opening weekend? Whatever.
Cincinnati.
The dude couldn't get a bunt down twice. Yeah, couldn't get a bunt down twice. 2 strikes, he gets a home run to win the game, and the game goes over the total as a result. You have those, if he gets the bunt down, you got room to play. Instead, he hit a 2-run jack, and the game went over, and the Tigers win. That does happen. That will happen. The longer you do this, the more that's going to happen. One of the keys is breathing. When you've done your work, you found a great bet, something random happens, and the guy doesn't get a bunt down and it costs you the game, or something like that. There's the exhale factor where you take a minute. You can't let it make you as crazy as some people let it make them. If you want to do this long term, because it's going to happen. Inevitably, it's going to happen.
Yeah. Now we had the layoff, as everyone knows, 4 months for the NHL, NBA, and we're tipping off again tomorrow night. Now, as somebody who's been watching baseball and been betting just about every game, I've always been a contrarian. In other words, if the public or odds are indicating, this team is priced here, given all the randomness, variance, injuries, weird travel disruptions, and obviously even the personal lives of players, which are really hard to predict, I thought about anytime we can take points, anytime we can fade what is expected, I'm thinking there's at least a hint of value there. So sure enough, opening day of baseball, essentially the second day of baseball season, 15 games, and the favorites blister the board. I think they went 13-2. 13 winners for the favorites, 2 losers. Now I'm swinging into the NBA here. I know it's 2 different sports, but should we just throw the contrarianism out the window and say, hey, you know what? The best teams have been dying to get, and they're going to run out of the gate fast, and they're going to kick some ass. What do you think, Teddy?
So we've seen, we've seen restarts in other leagues and other sports. Certainly when you're talking about something like the European soccer, all right, the best teams came out and kicked everybody's ass. And it was chalk, 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 chalk. That wasn't the case over the opening weekend of MLB. The first 2 days, 14-2 to the favorites. And then over the weekend, the dogs were biting hard. Certainly Saturday was a big dog day. And, there were, I think, 6 or 7 dogs at plus 180 or higher that cashed on Saturday. So it wasn't like that. This is what I'm expecting out of the restart, all right? I'm expecting to make adjustments on the fly. There's a handful of teams that I have isolated as maybe this might be a bet on squad, maybe this might be a bet against squad, but more than any other factor, I'm going to look at this little 8-game run as a chance to make quick adjustments. The betting markets, Nolan, are going to continue to do what they do. They're locked into season-long stats. And when we look at the point spreads, when we look at the totals, there are some adjustments, but they're based on what the teams were 4 months ago and 5 months ago and 6 months ago. Some teams are going to get right back to that level. Others will not. My goal going back into the restart is make quick adjustments. If a team looks out of sync one game and we don't see any reason that they're going to be better the next game, they become an immediate fade. And that's one of the reasons why I've been watching these scrimmages the way that I have, to try to get a sense for, how bad are some of the bad teams, how good are some of the good teams, even though there's been so much static in the scrimmage games with players getting playing time and rotations out there that aren't going to be there here in the bubble. I continue to think that the time that I spent watching those is going to pay off over the next few weeks. So going in, I think the Bucks are going to be a good bet. I think Milwaukee comes out and is every bit as good as they were going in. Everything I've seen from Milwaukee makes and read from the Bucks make me think they're coming in at a very high level. When you look at the other two top teams certainly in the future book odds, the Clippers and the Lakers, I haven't gotten the sense that they're necessarily going to be ramped up the same way from day one. So of the three contenders, I think Milwaukee's going to be a moneymaker. Then we look at the bottom feeders and we say, okay, what do we do with Brooklyn?
Excuse me, Ted. Let me stop you for a second. We'll go to the bottom feeders in a minute, but I'd like you to tell me what we have this kind of a playoff seeding. I think 8 games are going to be played in the rest of the season. Yeah. Milwaukee's got the top seed locked up here. So why would they be coming out of the gate? And then the Lakers and Clippers are somewhat in battle there for the top seed in the West, I believe. So why are you so bullish on the Milwaukee Bucks? Bullish on the Bucks? Whatever.
One of the biggest betting myths out there is that teams give a crap about their seeding. Okay. And you see it all the time in April NBA. Oh, well, they're playing the only seed that matters. I shouldn't say that. The 1 seed matters. You get the easiest road. And the 4 seed matters because you get the home court against the 5. Well, the 1 seeds are, pretty much, it'd be a surprise to see any of the 1 seeds change. It's going to be, one would think, the Lakers and the Bucks, barring a collapse for one of those two teams. There's no home court advantage for the 4 seed or the 5 seed. Okay. We got the 4 seed. We're at home in this neutral floor. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So when you talk about these traditional motivations of we're going to improve our seeding, the only motivation here is get better for the teams that are in and or make the playoffs for the teams that aren't in. And anyone else that's trying to give you any other information is full of what, because it's simply not real. And there's 800 columnists that have columns to write. Well, this is a meaning. No, it's not a meaningful game. It's all about these teams getting themselves into playoff form. Milwaukee is a team that A, the continuity is there. B, every quote from that squad is hungry. C, we've watched them in the scrimmages and they looked mid-season form with the starters on the floor. D, the depth is there. Budenholzer has them ready, and I think the Bucks are going to be a bet on right from the get-go. They're ready. I'm not convinced every other team's ready, regardless of seeding questions.
Quick sidebar question. Everything else being equal based on we don't know what the odds would be. Let's suppose the Lakers face the Bucks in the championship. You like the Bucks that much? I know we got a lot of season play.
Right now, Milwaukee's the best team in the NBA, period. Okay. Will that be the case 2 months from now? I can't say. The injuries, whatever could happen. I mean, you know how it goes. The Bucks were the best team in the NBA last year. They had a 2-0 lead on the Raptors, and a week later they were out of the playoffs. So, I mean, things can and do happen. But right now, it's really not that close. Milwaukee is the best team.
You were talking about these so-called bottom feeders, the teams that are going to struggle to make the playoffs, and then some of those will be low-seeded. There are some long shots that, at least based on what I've read, some teams that could come out of nowhere. a lot of people in the Dallas Mavericks, for example, with the injury, and then now they're coming back somewhat healthier. There are some teams maybe that have some value, maybe underdogs in the at least in the 8-game regular season, then maybe into the second round of the playoffs. What are your thoughts about some of these bottom feeders?
So the following teams are lined at less than 4 wins. They're supposed to be sub 500 squads here in the bubble. We have the Indiana Pacers, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Phoenix Suns, the Brooklyn Nets, the Washington Wizards as the worst of the bunch. The Spurs are also on that list. And of course, Spurs coming back without Aldridge, multiple pieces. They looked awful in their first 2 scrimmages, played better in the finale. Washington and Brooklyn are really interesting teams. All right, Brooklyn is basically this is a summer league team. It's a D League team right now with an interim head coach, and everything I've seen out of Brooklyn is maybe. I wouldn't be surprised if the Nets are getting hammered in these games. I really wouldn't. I'm getting a very different vibe from the Wizards. All right, and the Wizards, from a power rating perspective, they're being power rated at the bottom there with Brooklyn. When you don't have Wall or Beal or Bertans or Smith for that matter, who's it's a squad that's full of no names, but I think they can play. The continuity's there with the coaching staff. I've read nothing but positives out of that locker room of late. There's a chance here the Wizards might be a nice little moneymaker that no one's paying any attention to. Again, they're catching 7 from Phoenix. Phoenix isn't any good. They're catching 7 from Phoenix on Friday night, and to me, that if Washington is as competitive as I think they're going to be, that point spread to me indicates that even if they don't cover that game at plus 14 against one of the good teams, or plus 16, maybe we can make some money with the Wizards. So Brooklyn, I don't know that we can. Washington, I think we will.
Going back to the Bucks, I'm looking at Friday's card, and the opener. This is 2 big teams in the East. The Boston Celtics playing at Milwaukee. Milwaukee, that line for some reason dropped. It goes 6 down to 5, and I see some 4.5s now. So apparently the market's not agreeing with you on the Bucks. Maybe they just like Boston.
So be very careful when you're talking about what the openers are. Okay, because you might have one book posted one opener 3 months ago, or this line opened 4.5, has been sitting 4.5, 5. There were some in terms of the broader market, and you'll see. Let's not forget, this book's going to open here in Vegas. This book's going to open in New Jersey. This book's going to open in Costa Rica. This book's going to open in the UK. When I start talking about openers, I'm always talking about that first consensus number, and the consensus number here has basically been 4.5, and it's still 4.5. If you watched Boston in their 2 last 2, really all 3 preseason scrimmages, but the second preseason scrimmage, there was no defense. There was no transition defense. Brad Stevens went nuts. He was really mad after the game. They won by 15, and Stevens was fuming. The third preseason game was even worse. So I don't know if it was just one of those deals where it wasn't a big deal for that game, but I think Boston has issues, right? I'm concerned about their transition defense. I've seen it with my eyes, and that's something Milwaukee will exploit like nobody's business. I've got the Bucks minus 4.5 in my pocket.
How much are you given for home court advantage, if anything?
0. There's no home court advantage. They're playing in a bubble. One team's listed as the home team.
So that means nothing when people see one team on the bottom of the frame. It just to be clear, it means absolutely nothing. Yes.
Absolutely nothing, and that includes the playoffs. No, that's the beauty of it. Is we got home court advantage. No, okay, great. You have home court advantage. Knock yourself out on this neutral floor with no fans. The motivation is to get into the playoffs. Seeding is not a motivating factor this year at all.
What about
playing good ball?
Very good. What about experience? The San Antonio Spurs, very uncustomarily, being a team near the bottom, they're usually at the top of the West. Certainly since the Popovich era, the last 20 seasons, I've never seen them, getting points like they're getting. But as you say, they could be live getting, one of the lower seeds. Will experience, at least the coaching experience of some of the veteran coaches who are proven winners, being able to manage adverse situations. Is there any advantage to being a veteran coach team?
So I haven't seen anything from Pop that makes me, Coach Popovich, that makes me think the Spurs are going balls to the wall to get to a playoff spot here. Haven't seen anything. Not in the games, not any of the quotes. The Spurs were really sloppy in some of their they had their guards had 17 turnovers over a 2-game span. Murray was struggling, White was struggling. They played much better in the finale, but at no point during any of this is Pop saying, we got to make a run, we got to do this. He's just, we're going to try to get better, incrementally better. I don't have the Spurs high on my list of teams I want my money on in Orlando. They may get there, but we will make adjustments on the fly here. That's the whole key, in my mind, to making money during this 8-game span is finding the season-long stats that are lying right now. And that means adjusting on the fly.
I'm talking to
Spurs have terrible season-long stats. For what it's worth.
I'm talking to Teddy Sevransky, aka Teddy Covers, and he's my guest here on Slapshot, brought to you by Pointspreads.ca. You can check out the latest lines at Spreads.ca, and obviously Teddy there in Las Vegas, always shopping for the best numbers, both online and across the counter there on the Strip. Now let's move over to baseball. Big news, obviously, the Marlins getting hit with the COVID bug. I'm wondering if the public is overreacting here a little bit as much as someone can overreact to a team being decimated, but maybe an isolated case, because we're not seeing anybody from the Phillies or some of the other teams that were in contact with them have anything that was like that yet. Let's hope an isolated incident, or am I just being ridiculously optimistic?
We can hope for that, but yeah, of course we can hope for it, because no one on any other team has tested positive yet. Operative word being yet. As we know, the testing on this, there's a delay between when you get tested and when you get the results. There's a delay between when you are potentially in a situation with someone that's contagious and whether you actually get it. We'll know. So the fact there's been no positive tests on other teams so far, okay, give me a week, and we'll feel better about the situation in MLB. All that said, there's going to be positive tests in baseball. There has to be. Okay, they have a plan for this. They expected this. As a group, they said, we're going to play through this. It's not going to work if 17 teams get decimated with it, but if one team does, or even another team does, I think baseball will play on. They made the decision, we're going to go back. And once you make that decision that we're going to go back, it means bubble, no bubble, whatever it is, it means you're going to play through positive cases. Baseball will have to play through positive cases for the season to continue to exist. And so far they're doing that. And I'm in favor of that.
We've seen now almost a full week of baseball, in the sense that we've seen the pitching rotations for most teams have gone full cycle, first through the fourth or fifth starters, and now we're back into the aces pitching today and tomorrow for most teams. Of course, that'll eventually blend through, and you won't have consistent days where you have aces most days. But here's another day, today and tomorrow, where we're going to see the best pitching lineups, and that's reflected in the totals in baseball betting. We saw 9s and 9.5s, lots of 10s. Now we're seeing today a lot of 8s and 8.5. So clearly that's factored in. Now the question is, what's going to happen here? What adjustments are you making based on what you've seen the first week of Major League Baseball?
So I've been looking to play overs. All right. I think there is a strong rule change propensity for overs right now. Okay. We have multiple factors in play. 15 of the 30 teams have at least 2 starters on the DL. 17 of the 30 teams have at least 3 relievers on the DL. Okay. The pitching, as you've seen, it isn't what it normally is. Even with the aces on the hill today, the bullpens aren't where they were. Okay. The second and third and fourth and fifth starters aren't at that level. We're not starting in April with cold weather. We're starting in July with warm weather. Okay. The rule change where the relief pitcher has to face at least 3 batters. That to me is as for totals wise, it's enormous. Because the guy comes in, he doesn't have anything, the manager can't pull him out. He's got to face that third batter. You know, you can't come in and just face the lefty unless you get him out. But it really sets up for some late inning offensive explosions. And we've seen that. We've seen a good handful of games that went under first 5 innings and flew over the total by the 9th. So, and then last but not least, we have the extra inning rule with the runner starting on second base. And, you know, we're seeing runs scored in extras more than they were. When you put all those factors together, and the total marketplace is what it is. It's the same marketplace that it was last year. They're betting this last year's stats, you know, and last year's advanced metrics. We haven't seen the broader marketplace pop up these totals. And some of these lineups are incredible. You know, I didn't even mention the DH in the National League. You know, DH matters. You know, the baseline totals for the Dodgers are now 8 as opposed to the 7, 7.5. Some of the teams with potent lineups, the baseline totals are ticked up. But I've been looking for overs. I will continue to look to bet overs in MLB right now. I think that's the biggest weakness in the betting markets here in late July, early August.
Yeah, good advice there from Teddy Covers. Speaking of overs, if you were betting on the New Jersey gambling handle on baseball, apparently they just shattered it. They got more action in the first weekend than they usually get in a month of action. I guess obviously it's the dam, the floodgates releasing all this pin up. Well, some money and obviously some enthusiasm, and people want to play North American sports again. You think baseball is going to fade out as a gambling attraction as the NBA and the NHL drops the puck here another week, and then obviously the football, everything going on at once? There's only so much money to be bet. Yes. Yeah,
I mean, football is king. The baseball handle will be affected if and when football gets going. I'm not convinced. There's an enormous amount of pent up demand, as we've seen this first weekend. You talked about the numbers from Jersey, where I mean, people are very interested in betting, and baseball traditionally comes. You know, you have football season where everyone's going nuts, and you have this March Madness where everyone's going nuts, and then baseball fills the summer months that people aren't paying, the casual bettors aren't paying necessarily as much attention to the markets. That's not the case this year. Everyone's been sitting on their ass for months. So I do think baseball handle will be a good notch or two higher than it's been in any recent season. And I don't think that it drops off with NBA and NHL. I think it'll take 4 or 5 sports going at once for the baseball handle to really be negatively affected. I think it'll take NFL and college football to get going before the baseball handle starts to drop.
All right, final question and topic for Teddy Savransky. NFL, you talked about it before. It's the king. A lot of speculation. We're all watching and waiting. Right now, we would be entering training camps and maybe the first preseason game. Of course, there's not going to be any preseason football. A lot of people actually like that. And then we'll get into the regular season in early September. Nobody really knows this, but you do have your pulse on certainly the Las Vegas gambling market. And, and by the way, this drama is heightened by the fact that for the very first time, we were going to have a professional football team, the Raiders, playing here in Las Vegas. Now that's on ice. Talk about that whole thing and what a circus this is going to be, your prediction.
Well, I mean, the Raiders playing, the Allegiant Stadium's going to be open. The Raiders are going to play there. They just may not have any fans. Week 2, what do they have? The week 2 Monday night opener against New Orleans. A game that I really wanted to go to that game, Nolan. I did. I have to say, there's not. I don't go to many games anymore. When you live in Vegas, there's no reason to. You have plenty. I got the 3 screens here in my office, let alone if I want to go to the sports book or anything. But that was one game that I was looking forward to going to. And obviously it's not going to happen with fans. But when we talk about the NFL, let me put it this way. If there's no NFL, our problems are bigger than the NFL.
Yeah.
Okay.
Point.
That's if there's no NFL, we are talking about it's not a recession anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's how big the NFL is.
Yeah.
So if you're going to talk about one league that's going to pull out all the stops and do whatever they can do to get these games played, the NFL is going to play through positive tests. They're going to play through outbreaks. They're going to do whatever they can do to get these games on the field. And that'll work until somebody dies. And then if somebody dies, then that might change things. But I think that the NFL has the blinders on strong enough to be able to withstand the criticism. And the amount of money that we're talking about, these aren't pennies, these aren't millions, these are billions of dollars. It's about money, of course, and it's so much money that they're going to do everything, one way or another. They're going to find ways to get, what happens a month in, you can't say. But the NFL is going to kick off. The NFL is going to get started, and we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, follow-up question. Just got to ask this. As you say, it's about money. It's people's habits, their lifestyle is built around the NFL in the fall. And, of course, that's a great point you make, that if there's no football, we've got much bigger problems than just sports or gambling. But latest word I've seen is 25 players have opted, NFL players that is, have opted not to say they're not going to play this season. That's very interesting. Now, what if we get into names like Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes or Ben Roethlisberger? What happens if they decide to bench themselves? Whole different ball game. Could that influence pulling the plug or suspending games to a shorter? Will not happen.
Nope. Mahomes and Brady and Roethlisberger could quit. Say, I forget. I'm not sitting out. I'm quitting. The NFL is still kicking off on September 13th if they can.
All right.
It's not how many industries are bigger than football than the NFL? It's like shutting down the auto factories, I mean, it's an enormous economic impact nationwide, not just the teams and the players and the TV revenue and the sports bars and the vendors. And I mean, there's a whole economy with each one of these 32 NFL teams on game day that feeds people all year long. And without that, I would call it an economic crisis. The NFL playing is bigger than the NFL. College is a different story. And again, they keep the people who are going to make money off it keep trying to putting out plans to get college football going. And the coaches who are a bit more foresightful have done their best to get team-wide immunity, prior to the start of the fall camps. But you're not paying the college kids. And that's a big difference with the risk that you're taking. In MLB, you say, hey, man, you want to play? You don't want to travel around? You're getting paid. That's a risk you want to take to get paid. Go for it. And that's what they're doing. You can't do that in college because the kids aren't getting paid.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different dynamic there. If you want to take a risk, Nolan, you say, hey, I want to take this risk, and there's a 1% chance of me dying and a 2% chance of me getting rich and a 97% chance that nothing's going to happen. You're allowed to take that risk, as a grown man. College kids are not there yet, where you say, all right, you might get rich and make the NFL and you might die. But 97% chance that nothing happens. You see what I'm saying? I'm using bad percentages, but the concept is it's a different metric with the college kids than with the pros. They're not getting paid. And therefore, I think the risks that I'm not optimistic about college football the way I am NFL. We might see it. The NFL, I'm convinced we will see some NFL. And I hope that that obviously that we're able to get through the season, that the league will be able to withstand whatever test they get, a positive test they get, and get through. And I'm making bets like the NFL season's going to go. So, you know, I haven't made college football bets, season-long college football yet, but in the NFL, we're there. So,
All right, excellent insight from Teddy Covers, exactly what I expected. Teddy, I'd like to ask a favor. I think prior to the NFL season starting, if it gets to that, maybe if you come back on in a month from now, maybe forecast the NFL for us. If we get, I don't want to do a show obviously this early, but hey, can we talk again? And I think a lot of listeners, viewers would like to have you back on.
I see how you go, Nolan. Like, hey, Joe, come do one show with me. Come on, give me. And then
Got you back in. Pull you back in.
They keep bringing me back. Of course, I'll be on with you. It's always look. You're a friend. You're a good man. You had Krakenberger on last week. Man. It's all good. You know, I mean,
that's right. You were the second phone call I made.
but the whole point that you're not. It's not bottom tier guests. You know, you're not dealing with clowns. I appreciate that. You know, I enjoy working with you, and I'm happy to do whatever within my schedule availability. I'm happy to do.
Of course, and you're very busy. And let's clue in the final comment here. How can people follow? And I'll tell you what, anybody watching this, you should be following Teddy Covers, Teddy Zavransky. You should follow him. He's always got interesting insight, does his homework for sure. Where can they follow you and maybe even get some picks from you, Teddy?
Sure. I mean, you can follow me on Twitter at Teddy_Covers. And the website is sportsmemo.com. Tons of free info. We do have picks if you're interested. Again, sportsmemo.com and at Teddy_Covers.
Outstanding. Thank you to my special guest, Teddy Covers, Teddy Zavransky. I'm Nolan Dalla for Pointspreads.ca. This has been another, I think, very exciting, interesting, informative edition of Slapshot. And I'll see you again next week. And we'll talk NBA, NHL, and who knows what else. Thanks very much. Goodbye and good luck.